it's not for everyone, but like for you to go through and do, your personal sort of summit that's there, that's huge.
After I finished, she was like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "I am never doing
Never
that
asked
again."
that question. No,
Never.
not after looking at it.
Welcome to Speed Data, quick conversations with cybersecurity leaders. I'm your host, Megan Garza. I'm excited to welcome Aaron Ansari, the virtual CISO for Exela Pharma Sciences, to the show today. Welcome, Aaron.
Hi, nice to be here.
Aaron is a tenured information security executive with practical business experience and a background in global management and security solution development. His skill set includes information security, risk management, network administration, and programming, and he is proficient in standards and regulations such as HIPAA, PCI, DSS, NIST, and HITRUST. In his free time, the Ohio State University graduate enjoys volunteering, partnering with organizations such as Girls in Tech and the OWASP Foundation, and competing in Ironman challenges. Wow, that is quite impressive. So, Aaron, what made you want to, and how did you get started in cloud security?
Yeah, I sort of saw the trend of migration from on-prem to cloud starting back in 2006. I was in a chief architect capacity at a financial services firm, BMW Group Financial Services. And we were looking at evaluating, moving and migrating some of our applications to have high availability and those sorts of things to the cloud. And, at the time, back in 06, 07, 08, talking about putting your bank account online and all those sorts of things, people, they'd laugh you out of the room sort of thing. Not exactly, but partially.
Yeah.
But the point being, you see the rise of public cloud providers and that sort of thing start all the way back then. And obviously momentum and growth and the trend sort of continued. So I kept, I guess I'll say career eye or professional eye on it. Kept my certifications and my knowledge base there. And it was, I guess back in 2019 when I really sort of dove in, which doesn't seem that long ago, but we're knocking on the door of 2025 already. And, with a company called Trend Micro, dived into the cloud realm, specifically with workload protection, CNAP, security posture management, and those sorts of things.
Yeah. And what's the hardest thing about your role?
I'll flip that question around. I thought about this one a lot, and I'll say, what's most needed in this role? And the answer is actually not technical capabilities. It's not certifications or attestations. It's not understanding, ISO 27001. It's empathy. And working with business leaders to understand their pain points really requires empathy. Because regardless of how I view security and what I want to get done from an agenda standpoint, the founders of the business and the people that are driving the business towards growth have a very broad and very company-oriented view, and it's something that I certainly have to do from a security lens of the broad company.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about your day-to-day responsibilities.
Yeah, so we have a team that's responsible for everything related to security at Excela, and this can be simple things like password resets, which we've worked on automating, to more complex things such as data breaches, or, we're getting attempts to log in from Russia and we don't have any employees in Russia sort of thing. And so management of the day has to be planned weeks, if not, a month and before. Of course, little fires will come up and we have to work as firefighters. But if we're not proactive in the way that we build our weeks and months, almost think of it like an application, sort of like a release cycle. And planning each release, we will quickly be enveloped in on our heels more than we are sort of being a little bit more proactive.
You definitely don't want to be in that position where you're kind of playing catch up.
Definitely not.
From your perspective, what are the biggest differences between data security in the cloud and on-prem? I know you said you kind of saw the writing on the wall with that. What are the biggest differences there?
It's very important to understand, and we'll talk about this a little later, but shared responsibility. When you're not the one that's sort of governing or owning the infrastructure and the layer one, layer two physical components, all the way up to the virtual, layer 7 sort of stuff. You have to be keen to know where your responsibility starts and where your responsibility stops. But the biggest challenge there is visibility. You certainly need to have visibility when you've gone beyond an infrastructure that you're in complete, I won't say control, but I'll say ownership of.
What do you think most organizations misunderstand about cloud security?
So that's the thing, right? That ownership versus control. Even when you're on-prem and you have everything in your four walls, sort of say, you don't have as much control as you think you have, right? You'll discover all sorts of things that are happening in your network or on your environment that you didn't know happening. Back in the 2010s, we found this twice at one of my jobs. Somebody running a Bitcoin mining server on our environment in our four walls, right? We didn't have control over that until we found out later. So it's really ownership and visibility, and getting that understanding that you don't have control. You need the visibility to have ownership.
And what are some of the biggest challenges in understanding your security posture across all platforms?
Yeah, for sure. That visibility is key there, but also resources. So our team, has the resources that we've been allocated. And of course, every leader wants their team to be, as big and as broad as they can. But the reality is, if you look at efficiency and you look at the way that businesses need to be able to run, you do have to run as optimized as possible. And that's where we use partnerships. So we have, partnerships such as yours, where we're getting visibility and we're getting reporting, we're getting expertise that we don't normally get on teams and the resources that we're able to build. And truly relying on partnerships is fundamental to being able to understand and mitigate the risks that's associated with operating in the cloud or today.
Yeah. And in your opinion, what is the best way to defend against a cyber attack?
Perfect segue, because you have to have the partnerships and the resources in place. So let's go back to my comment about making certain that you're proactive in planning, right? We have to ensure that we've got retainers in place so that when we have to make the call to say, hey, we've got an incident, it's not somebody that's like, who are you? We don't know who you are. And we've got 50 other people that made the same phone call before you. So take a place in line. Having those partnerships, having the visibility, having the relationships already set up is paramount. And it's my responsibility as an information security leader to ensure that the business leaders understand this going into a budgetary cycle, going into an annual sort of technological evaluation phase, so that when the incident happens, we're as ready as we can be.
What advice do you have for other security leaders on first steps when discovering a vulnerability or exploit?
Translating that vulnerability exploit into business language is paramount, right? If you say, hey, we're susceptible to a relay attack,
Your board is going to be like, is that bad? I don't know.
Right. What? If you say, somebody could overload our processor and cause a fire on a physical asset, that's going to be something that's completely different and received in a much more, we'll say, logical way, so that the business can respond to that risk appropriately.
Yeah, you want to break it down to where they understand, like, okay, well, what could be the consequence if we don't do anything about this? In terms of AI, that's the big buzzword today. How do you think AI is impacting data security, both positively and also negatively?
Large language models, machine learning, artificial intelligence. There's a search for, it's kind of a solution without a problem sort of thing. Not really, but vendors are, I won't say struggling, but are working to implement those in the best possible ways. And some things are really great, like when you have an AI assistant built into a solution that helps you work through creating a script or, creating some sort of solution. Some things sort of miss the mark, like when you've got, GPT-enabled search or those sorts of things that really are what that solution is sort of meant for. The way that we evaluate it is to ensure that as we layer it into various services and technologies, it makes sense to enable in those services or those technologies.
And as a writer and editor at Varonis, I use Grammarly often.
Right.
But sometimes the changes it wants to make, I'm just like, but that's just wrong. Like, that's not correct. So you kind of still have to watch out for the error of AI as well.
Right.
If you weren't in cybersecurity, what would you be doing?
I was asked this question at a conference just a couple of weeks ago, and with boards and people in the audience, my answer is like, well, of course I'd be doing cybersecurity. That's my passion. That's what I love, and it
I
is.
would do it for free. What are you talking about?
Right, exactly. But in reality, so you alluded to this at the beginning. I'm involved in a couple of nonprofits, Girls in Tech, OWASP Foundation, and one dealing with wildlife, human wildlife conflict, how to live with wildlife. I would be involved in helping animals and helping people all day long, as much as I could.
Yeah, I volunteered with Tech Girls.
Okay.
Are you familiar with them? We did a lesson on just like the basics of cybersecurity with tech girls, like middle-aged schoolgirls, and that was really cool. And they were so interactive, which I expected them to just kind of be like sitting there behind their computers with their parents looking over their shoulder. But like they were genuinely asking really cool questions and like chatting and ask this and that and running in the chat, and they really appreciated it, which I thought was so cool.
For sure. Yeah. There's a whole generation of technologists that are growing up with things that we never had.
Yeah.
And it's an extension of their personality. And so we have to cultivate that.
Yeah. And I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here, but like, tell me about being an Ironman. That is so incredibly impressive.
I say this when I talk to people about it. It's one foot in front of the other or one pedal stroke. And it's cliche to say, but so much of it is mental. If you can mentally build the training, just like we talked about, right? Like the day of the event is, if you're planning for it 30 weeks in advance, you can do it. And it's all about unlocking what's up here to enable what's down here to accomplish the goal.
My husband is a marathon runner.
Yeah.
And he would love to do an Ironman one day. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm missing something. Like maybe I should get into running. Maybe I should try and see what my husband loves so much about this. So I trained for a half marathon.
Wow. Wonderful.
Aaron, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Okay.
And then running it back and doing it twice. Like,
right. But you did it, right? Like,
I did. But like,
wonderful.
No way I could do a marathon, let alone an Ironman. And
it's not for everyone, but like for you to go through and do, your personal sort of summit that's there, that's huge.
After I finished, he was like, what do you think? You ready to do a full marathon? And I'm like, I am never doing that.
Never asked that question. No.
Never. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Aaron. I love chatting with you and learning more about your perspective and learning more of who you are as a leader. Thank you for joining me on Speed Data today.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.